Hello and welcome to another episode of Rallying the Forge. I'm Solymr, and in this edition of Silver Bullets, we're going to be talking about what makes a deck good. When you pull a deck, how can you tell if it's going to be a good deck or not? And really, truly, that answer can vary from person to person, depending on play styles, cards they're looking for, the size of their collection. There's no easy answer for it, but I'm going to go through a lot of decks that I have on why I thought these decks would be good. I'm going to show you some decks from SolForgeFusionDecks.com that uses Scuba Toad's deck scoring system on how he scores, what decks might be good to try to give you an idea, and show you how that tool can help you assess your own decks. And also, at the same time, show you that it doesn't always catch everything, right? So, let's jump into some of my decks. And we'll start with this half deck here. And let me zoom this in some here. Okay. Hopefully that's pretty good size. So, this deck I opened, you can see the date there, it's a physical deck. Last year I opened it, or just over a year ago I opened it. So the first thing I look for in a deck when I'm looking at a list is I'm looking for key cards from that set. So for set 1, Utera, I'm looking for a Mantis, I'm looking for Swamp Moss Lurker, I'm looking for Botanimate. I'm also checking the Forgeborns. When it's Auros, I'm looking for Dark Forge Drain. This has Dark Forge Drain in Cycle 4, which is arguably the worst spot for it. However, the way this deck plays, it works out pretty well for it. It's kind of a nice finishing touch for the deck, potentially. That's something else I look for with the deck is what would be its win condition on its own. I like decks to have a win condition that it can do something where it can push me to victory. I'm looking for Krogaius. I don't have a Mantis here. I don't have a Krogaius. I do have a Lurker. So when I have a Lurker, I'm looking for life gain. How many life gain sources do I have, and how many are realistic of me being able to play? So you're looking here, and we have Glowhive Siren. And I'm not going to touch on every card on what they do. I'll let you read them there as I pull them up, but I'm going to kind of go through it quickly because I've got maybe a dozen decks to cover or more that I want to go through. But so we have Glowhive Siren, we have Botanimate, of course. So those are two great life gain sources. I have double Soothing. So Soothing gives you health when you play the creature, and Soothing Ravager is a self-solving creature. So you can see his ability there. If you gain health, he gets bonus stats. He's always going to get it if you do it in the right order. So that right there is 4 sources of health gain. And then if you look at Auros, we have a 5th source with its Cycle 2 ability. So to me, really, really strong on the life gain for Swamp Moss Lurker. This doesn't count Refreshing Ranger. It says if it replaced a creature, I don't count on Refreshing being able to pull it off. It's there as a bonus, as a potential play, but I don't count it as a positive. It may in Scuba Toad's scoring system, but I don't count it for myself. The next thing I'm looking for, so I've got what I need for Swamp Moss Lurker to work. Next I'm looking for what kind of creatures I have, what kind of spells I have. I don't like decks with less than 3 spells for the most part, but it doesn't mean I won't play them. It really just depends on the deck. So looking at creatures, we have a bear. It's Magnivorious, which doesn't really matter to me. It's a bear. His level 3, he's always pretty beefy. So like that, Shardplate Delver is a really nice creature. It has Breakthrough and can get buff stats if it replaces a creature. But the Breakthrough is the key thing for me, especially when you're looking at a Cycle 4 Dark Forge Drain. That's going to be one of my target creatures to dump this on because Breakthrough can win you a game with when you pump them up like such. Ravager, of course, self-solving, so you're going to count his stats towards it. So he's a 14/21. That's beefy. I've got 3 beefy creatures, not counting the swamp moss. So I've got really good sized creatures, plenty of life gain. Spell-wise, Botanimate, nice to have in the deck. Toxic Spores is a pretty good spell. And then Vine Lash. Once you get past the level 1, it's a really great spell in my opinion. But and this is coming more useful than you might think. It's kind of underrated sometimes. So overall, I like the cards in the deck. And I'm looking at how many cards are what I would call a dead card. A card I'm never going to play. There's no situation where it would seem useful. And in this deck, I don't have any. The Refreshing Ranger is more utility with the refreshing ability, and the full lanes, he gets bonus stats. That's about the most often I'll play him, is if I have a full board and I can get him buffed up. But it's probably one of the least played cards in the deck. So overall, this deck, when I pulled it, I felt had really good potential to be some sort of life gain style deck, and it turned out to be one of my best decks by far. Most consistent decks. It's a matter of helps pairing it with something really good too. So I've got it paired with this deck, and it works really well together. So this deck also has a lot of life gain and other cards that I'm looking for to combine with that. But if we look at, we have Dissient Siphon for life gain. We have the Shambling Summoner, of course, Vampiric Creeper. So it's got some life gain sources. We don't have to worry about the Forgeborn in this case because we were going to use the Oros from the other deck. And then I didn't mention it, but I do have the Polymorpher low level there, can replace an enemy minion. So it can do some like Botanimate type effects. Adding to minion hate, we have Bone Scythe Reaver, which to me is more of a utility card, but they've come in very handy in matches, sometimes late in the game when you haven't played it at all, because it's not a great card at level 1. But when someone drops a big Oak Father or pumps it up, you can drop him and remove that Oak Father. So really good utility card. We do have some Infernal Rituals, a good finishing card in my opinion. It can count as a win condition because you can surprise your opponent late in a match with the level 3 version and push some big damage through. Spirit Leash has some removal potential, and it can pump a spirit, which we do have Forsaken Reaper, which is a really nice card because he pumps your creatures when they get damaged through. So really overall, you look at this deck here, and I don't count Portal Shade as a dead card. I feel like it has some utility, not a ton, but it does have some, and it does have stealth, so if you needed to drop that to get some extra damage through potentially. He does get pretty sizable at level 3. I think it's 13 attack. So if you were leveling him up, the level 3 is not bad either. Spirit Reaver is one of the cards I don't use a whole lot, but that can be really useful as well. That to me in this deck is a utility card. So it has a lot of utility cards in the Spirit Reaver, Portal Shade, and Bone Scythe Reaver, but it's got 3 really good other creatures in the Shambling Summoner, Vampiric Creeper, and Forsaken Reaper. So creature-wise, I'm okay with it. And spell-wise, I'm very happy with this spell package. Just because Infernal Ritual gives you a win condition, Spirit Leash gives you some removal potential, Dissient Siphon, health draining gain, plus potential free play if you sack a creature. If you've got, you can put minions out with the Summoner, potentially. And then Zerath's Will can be a free play with life gain. So free plays are always great with decks. And I've got plenty of good Necreum decks. This one just seemed to pair best with that deck. But when you're looking at a deck, it's going to matter of what are you really looking for. When you look at Necreum, for example, set 1, I'm looking for Shamblers, Darkheart Sorcerer, Dreadbolt, any number of spells. They have all 4 of these are good spells in my opinion. We also have, there's Soul Reap, which we don't have here, which wants Beast though. Vampiric creatures are really good. You know, there's a whole bunch of cards looking for Necromancers. But not every deck's going to have all those cards, obviously. So you have to kind of assess what the deck has on the list of cards you are looking for. In this case, I got a Shambling Summoner, which is one of the best shambling creatures you can get, in my opinion. But you have to look at the cards around it and kind of assess it from what does it have and what's it trying to do and what are you looking to do with the deck. In this case, I'm trying to find a pair for this deck. This deck was the primary deck I was trying to build with. This was the pair I found for it, and it works really well with it. So in this case, another deck here with 10 good cards. Nothing that I feel is throwaway. When you have a deck with 10 good cards, the Forgeborn leaves something to be desired, but if you don't use the Forgeborn, shouldn't be a problem. So these 2 decks both have good cards with them. So now we're going to look at another deck, and this deck I really like, and it's with my I pair it with my Furious Shardback deck that I played in Worlds. And on surface, you would look at it and be like, it's just okay. But it actually works really well. And that's something else you can't always, you can judge a deck by the cover, so to speak. But sometimes you go to play with them and they work out way better than you ever expected. Sometimes they work out way worse. I have decks that, and I'll show you a deck. Let me pull it up so I don't forget real quick. So we'll cover that deck later. But sometimes you have a deck and you think it's going to be great and really awesome, and it just can't make it work. So that happens too. But this deck I picked honestly because of the spell package for it, and the creatures weren't horrible, honestly. So in this deck, looking at it, I paired it with my Furious Shardback deck, which we'll look at next. Neither of these decks are highly rated on SolForgeFusionDecks.com, which is going to be one of those situations where the score doesn't tell the whole story of the deck, and it's, those scores are kind of in a vacuum, but they can be good indicators of a deck's power level. And normally what I like looking at it is the decks that has really highly scored are going to be pretty good indicators that deck's going to be pretty good. And you probably want to look into what you can do with it. Other decks like these that don't score high on the surface, they don't look like anything special. I remember a comment after Worlds in 2024 when I finished third with this deck, and one of the comments in Discord was, I don't even know what this deck is supposed to be. I knew what it was supposed to be because I played it, but other people looked at it and couldn't figure out exactly what it was trying to do. And we'll look at that deck as a whole in a minute, once you see the other half. But this half here, so the spells, obviously Zerat's Will and Electronet are free plays, so that's really good. Free plays are always a bonus in a deck. I really like Omnom Nom and Varric's Embrace as removal type cards. Varric's Embrace does give you some health gain as well. Creature-wise, I love Dr. Frankenbaum as a creature. I really like that. Gloom Reaper Hag, I think, is one of the best commons in set 1. Then we have a Shambling Demon. Is really good. It's a shambling creature for one that's great, but the demon gives it nice health numbers so it can survive. And then we have Portal Shade, which I already talked about as a utility type card. Arrogant Fiend, not big on his low health numbers across the board, but his ability for when he's destroyed, pumping something up, is a nice ability. Plus he has really good attack, so you can use him as a chump blocker, and then he pumps something else up that's going to live on the board, hopefully. So there's some utility there. He's not a dead card for the deck. The only card that I would consider a dead card, although it has come in handy before, is the Zithian Dreadmaw. Just because I don't have a lot of creatures to sacrifice to this and pump him up. He is a stealth creature, and that's where he's come in handy before. So he's borderline utility, but I would consider him mostly a dead card. I rarely ever play him. So, I mean, there are hands where it's the best card to play, but I really rarely play him. So, overall, another deck with a lot of good cards in it that aren't a whole lot of dead cards. You've got half your creatures are good, the other half is poor. The spell package, in my opinion, is really strong. So, like I said, I picked this for the spell package because the other half of the deck, as I said, is a Furious Shardback deck. And we do use the Korok with this deck for his Forgeborn abilities. But it's also got double Windy, which is deal 1 damage to a creature for each spell in your banish pile. The level 3 version is deal 2 damage for each spell. So we want to play a lot of spells. And we have 2 free spells in the Necrim half, and we have 2 spells that are removal type spells. So we can use them to help control the board state. We also have in this deck Warbringer Ritual, which will start after level 1, starts letting you play spells for free. So if we have spells in hand, even though we don't have a whole lot in the deck, we can get more spell plays out. Disintegrate, of course, a removal spell, pretty strong on level. And then Spirit Golem Conclave is an Exalt, so it doesn't give you that spell in the discard or spell in the banish pile right away. But if you play the level 2, you'll destroy the level 1, and then it goes in there. And this can be really good with a card like Thundersoar, which the deck has. So looking at this deck with Tempest, this is a set 2 Tempest, and Tempest outside of RC decks, which I think we'll cover an RC deck here soon. Tempest is a hard faction for me to assess a lot of times, especially set 1 versions, but there are some modifiers like chaining, for example, that if you get a bunch of chaining creatures, that can be really good if you get 2 or 3 of them with a bunch of spells. I think Tempest's strength is going to be in its spells primarily, but there are situations where the creatures can also be really good. Windy creatures I really like. Obviously, Furious Shardback is one of the best Tempest creatures, one of the best creatures in the game. Thundersoar, I'm a big fan of Thundersoar, except against Shardbound Vexer and Traveler. But so this has 4 of those creatures. There's some other good creatures here and there. You could also look at as Tempest with, it's really strong with dinosaurs. If you get a good dinosaur heavy deck, that can be really synergistic and really strong. But for me, overall, it's a really hard faction to assess the decks on. I struggle with that one the most, I think. But this one, obviously the Furious Shardback. I won't take credit for discovering this card. Nathus actually has this with an RC deck, in his RC deck, and he would always destroy me with it until I discovered this in my collection one day and started using it. But this card's become very popular lately in the SFCS events. People getting creative with it, and it's really, really a strong card. So, but this deck here, spell-wise, I'm not big on Spirit Golem Conclave. I wouldn't call it a dead card though, but it doesn't always get played by me. Depends on the draws and what you have in the board state. Normally with this deck, when I pair these 2 half decks together, if I'm not playing a lot of spells, I'm probably going to lose the match. If you're forcing me to play my creatures, it's not going well for me. But sometimes that's just how it goes. Sometimes you win with that too, but I notice more often than not, if I'm playing my creatures, I'm not doing well. Creature-wise, we have 7 creatures. So the windy creatures are great. Fairy Shardback, good. Thundersword, good. Unstable Vortex. I really like this card. One, because when you play spells, which I play a lot of in this deck, it gets pumped up in its attack, but it also has an activate that you can just sack it and blast something off the board, essentially. So in that sense, it's got dual utility, and it's got good health, so it can survive a hit or two normally on level. So that's really good. And then we have Combat Sentinel, which gets pumped for each spell in your banish pile. Again, spells, windy, Sentinel. So these are very synergistic. And this card, you don't have to drop this at level 1. I can wait to drop this at, cycle 3, and it's still going to be just as good as the level 3 version, except it's going to have a little bit less stats. But if you've played 15 spells already, who cares? It's already coming out as a 2020. So this card can be used as an underdrop. You can use it on level 2 if you have a bunch of spells already in the discard, or banish pile rather. So this card can be very strong. I just wish it had breakthrough. And then Raging Warstoker is nice. It has aggressive, good attack, low health though at level 1, but level 2 it kind of balances out, and then level 3 kind of trails off on the attack, but the health goes up. This is nice on multiple levels. A lot of utility with it. You can drop it against stealth creatures that are causing you problems. It can be used as a chump blocker, and the level 2 is really sizable. So you can also use it to push some damage through if you're off Forge and there's an open lane. So a lot of this deck also has 10 good cards in it. Another deck like that. Not every deck's going to have 10 good cards. I have some that are not going to be that way. But these were my 4 best half decks in my opinion. So that's why I started off with those. As far as win condition goes here, we don't have an obvious win condition with this deck. It's really, you have to look kind of hard to find a win condition, but you have the Fairy Shardback potentially wiping the board, windy creatures clearing lanes for your creatures to get through. You're looking at Thundersoar needing to get pumped up to be a massive threat. He does have breakthrough. If you can get him pumped up and going, that can be a win condition. Combat Sentinel can get really huge. So you have to do a handful of things to be able to make a win condition. This deck is more straight up controlling the state of the board and letting whatever, it wears you down over time with a little bit of damage here and there consistently, because they can't block all your lanes, they can't remove your creatures. It just works really well. So there's no obvious win condition here other than being able to constantly clear lanes to push some damage through. So, and then like I said with this one, I don't know if I talked about win condition for this one. This one also doesn't really have a straight win condition. You have Shambling, which is nice. That can be devastating to opponents' health totals. Dr. Frankenbaum level 3 is nice if you can make it work. He can steal a creature from your opponent, which could give you a win condition potentially. But neither of these decks have a straight up win condition. But it's okay. Not every deck's going to have one. Not every deck has a Kragaius in it. Okay. So here's an RC deck. So RC is, in my opinion, one of the hardest decks for people to judge whether or not they have a good RC. And RC decks get a really high scoring no matter what on SolForgeFusionDecks.com. I wish it wasn't so highly scored, but I feel like, I think he could tone it down just a notch, but I think overall it's pretty fair, because you can have a bad RC deck, and no matter what, if you pair it properly, if you're playing the archetype properly, if if you flip it over turn 1, you're going to wreak havoc on your opponent no matter what. So, it's kind of hard in that respect to judge the decks, but like this deck here, I think is just average for an RC deck. It's not great, it's not horrible, but it's probably the second best RC deck I have. My son has the better one, I think, but they're both pretty close, and neither of them are great in my opinion. So obviously with Nova Elementalist, you play Rumble Spark Energy, and you need elementals to deal damage to the enemy player. You transform this and turn it into the Rumble Spark embodiment. So 1, you're looking for elementals, and 2, this Exalt makes creatures in the lane elementals. So whatever you put in that lane becomes an elemental. If they deal damage to the opponent, this will trigger the Exalt. So a lot of times it gets paired with Necrium, but you have cards like Dark Art Sorcerer, obviously. Shamblers can trigger it. Doom creatures can trigger it. You also have creatures from Tempest that can trigger it, like an Invocust can trigger it. You can deal damage directly to a player. Firefist Uranti can trigger it. Anything that deals damage to the player can trigger it. So it's not necessarily hard to flip if you build your deck right. But in this deck, the reason why I like this RC deck of mine compared to other ones, 1, it's got 3 spells. I don't know if I have any with 5 or more spells. Most of them I get like 1 or 2 spells, and to me that's just garbage. But so Flame Jet is a great spell to have in Tempest. Flame Sculptor's Seal is nice. You can clear lanes with this. Does 3, 5, and 7 damage. If you play a mage, you get to do the damage again. So you could use this to help clear lanes to push elemental damage through. And then Warbringer Ritual I love as a card because you get free spell plays. So spells I'm good with. The creature-wise, obviously you got Nova Elementalist, but then you got the Invocust, which is good in this deck. We have a Mystical Teacher, which when you play elementals adjacent to it, you can deal damage, so this can trigger RC as well, so that's a nice card to have in there. We have Uranti Heartseeker, which isn't a horrible card, but I'm just not a big fan for this deck. Pump is great, but with elementals, playing spells pumps them up. I don't necessarily need a creature to pump things up. It does give you a win condition on cycle 3 by giving creatures with 10 or more attack breakthrough, but I rarely ever get that out. And the deck's meant to be played aggressively. RC decks are notoriously aggressive, which is why they're hard to deal with as well. And you can't remove the embodiment easily with 8 health and being a level 3 creature. So Heartseeker, not a dead card, but not a great card for the deck. Lightning Tamer is nice because you get Spell Sprite minions, which are elementals. And it's a mage, which fits with the Flame Sculptor's Seal. We have Rageborn Eruptor, which is an elemental, which is nice. It has breakthrough, and it gets +1 for each Exalt in play. Counts your opponent's Exalts. At level 3, it gets +3, and has breakthrough still. So that can be a win condition with the breakthrough and the pump on it. So it can potentially trample over your opponent's blockers. And then you have a Combat Warstoker. Good attack, low health, good chump blocker. His stats are strong all the way through, so he's just a big body, but he doesn't really add any value to the RC portion of the deck. So overall, it's just okay. I would rather have, instead of the Heartseeker and Warstoker, I'd rather have 2 spells, and not just any spells. Sorry, I thought I heard something. But particular ones like Elementalist Ritual would be a really nice one to have in here. There's plenty of other good spells I'd be okay with. But I think that would make it a lot better. But at the same time, it's just an okay RC half. It could definitely win matches. I obviously finished top 8 in one of the SOS qualifiers with the deck, but sometimes it's just a matter of luck when it comes to that. So we use the Sunder for the most part with the deck, I feel like. The Frost Blast, I hate that on cycle 2. It's really just too weak. Play a free spell can be nice, and then 2 Spell Swarm minions. I'd rather swap the Frost Blast than summon the Swarm, but that's sometimes how it works. You don't get a great Forgeborn with your deck. So again, this deck has 10, not counting the Soulbinds, 10 good cards, not horrible, nothing dead. Like I said, the Heartseeker is closest to a dead card in the deck for me for the most part. But solid all around, and it's a good Nova deck. Well, it's an okay Nova deck, but it's good enough that it's usable. So I pair it with... Initially, I paired it with this half, and I might be changing which half I pair it with now. But, so, obviously I told you I like a lot of spells. And so my method for flipping the RC is Darkheart Sorcerer. That's my primary method. So I want a lot of spells. I want to be able to have spells, draw spells when he's on board. I don't want to draw creature hands all the time. So this might be my only 6-spell Darkheart Sorcerer deck, honestly, which I was kind of surprised at. But so we look at this. We'll look at the creatures first. We don't have to worry about the Forgeborn, by the way, because I'm not going to be using it. So creature-wise, Darkheart Sorcerer, of course, really good card to have. You have this in a Necrium, deck. You have to look at it and see how good are the rest of the cards with it to see if it's going to be usable. You definitely want a Darkheart with at least 3 spells in it, preferably upwards of 6. This one has 6, so automatically this deck has potential. We need to look at the rest of the cards, though. So we look at Corrupt Spectre. Corrupt, I hate. So this card is a dead card for me. It is rare that I would ever play this, and it would be very, very unique circumstances that this card would get played. So this is a dead card for me. Corrupt makes 99.99% of the cards that have Corrupt dead for me, but it doesn't mean that there isn't a situation where I wouldn't do this. If this would let me win because of stealth, I would play it and eat the 5 health if I can spare it, right? But Corrupt Spectre, dead card. Portal Shade, utility card. And then we have Stout Geist, who is a good body at level 1, gets really good health at level 2, and level 3 is just another big health creature. So it's not horrible. It's a spirit, so there might be synergies potentially there for it. But creature-wise, not really thrilled overall. The Corrupt Spectre, there could have been any number of other cards in that spot, and it would have been much better. But Corrupt Spectre is a dead card for me. Spell-wise, we were talking about Deceased Siphon being great. We have Grave Pact, which I'm not a huge fan of. It's a really strong ability, but this deck in particular, when I pair it with RC, I don't have a lot of creatures to sacrifice. There are situations where I'll sack certain creatures and be like, yeah, I can just chuck that, but the spell doesn't get played as much as I would like because I don't have bodies to sacrifice for the most part. But if I'm using it, I'm probably in a pretty good board state. And it's a really strong ability. But it's hard to get off when you don't have a lot of minion generation. Halazith. So I talked about the Spirit Synergy. There is that. But for the most part, Halazith is a dead card for me. Yes, I'll use it to proc the RC, flip it over with Darkheart on the board if it's my only spell. But giving a creature stealth for a turn doesn't necessarily do a whole lot for me. There's utility there with it, with an elemental potentially doing that, but if I have other spells, they're more impactful, in my opinion, depending on the board state. It's like I said, it's going to be a rare situation, very specific, that I'm going to use Halazith. I don't play it very often. Let's just say that. Neck Revive, good card. You got to level it up past level 1, though, and then you potentially have it for free from there on out. But it's nice to make them have to sack a creature if they don't have a lot on the board. Om Nom Nom and Eric's Embrace, we already talked about those 2 spells. I love them. So overall, spell package, 4 out of 6 are good. We have one that's so-so and one that's really not great in my opinion. So this deck has, almost 3 dead cards. It's got 2 dead cards, but it's not horrible because I need Dark Heart Sorcerer, I need spells, so it's good enough to use with my RSC deck. But then, I've played it plenty of times, and it's just inconsistent. It's not strong enough. It's not consistent enough, and I really rely on flipping that RSC and getting that out there. For me, when I'm judging an RSC deck, I like to look at the deck and I say, if I take RSC out of this deck, how good is the deck? Can it win on its own? With Dark Heart Sorcerer, yes, it technically could, but then that's really my only card that, like the Tempest half, you take away Nova, and I have a very bland Tempest deck, which is one of the things that's hard for me to judge with Tempest is without certain power cards, how good is the rest of the deck? I don't have any. I have a double chaining deck. I don't have any triple chaining decks to play with that could be interesting. You have teacher master combos you could potentially use with some other things. There's stuff there to use. It just doesn't come off as strong as other factions and their combos do. But there's definitely things there to use with it. And Tempest is a really good spell slinging faction. So a lot of times that's what I'm trying to do with it with a Dark Heart Sorcerer. But in this case, this combination to me it's just been very inconsistent, so it's why I've been down on my RSC deck. And then I decided the other day to make a new version with the same RSC half with a new Necrium half that maybe would work better, and already after playing it just a little bit, I feel like it's better or more consistent so far. Something I was looking for was hard removal. So I was looking for that Dreadbolt. So I still wanted a Dark Heart Sorcerer. It's my primary method. It's one of the easiest ways to flip the RC. And I wanted a Dreadbolt. So I was looking for more spells, but I found I only had 4 spell Dark Heart Sorcerer decks. So this is what I settled on because this also has a vampiric creature, which can trigger RC. It's got a Shambler that can also trigger RC, but a Shambler just being Shambler is good enough, too, for a deck. So those 3 creatures are really good. We've got a Combat Moeba. So at level 1, it's actually not a bad body like it normally is. Level 2, it's a very strong body. Level 3, it's just okay. So that's a good creature. Doesn't really push the RC deck any further with it, but it's, when you need a body, it's not bad. Grimgaunt Harvester is just a good defender. He's got no attack. He gets attack when your creatures die. So there's potential there with him. He does eventually get aggressive and lose defender if you get his attack up high enough. It's not a strategy I'm going for with him, but if I need a big blocker, he is there. So that's more for me like a utility card. It's not a dead card. There's definitely utility to be had there. And then we have Camouflage Revenant. He does have stealth, and when he's destroyed, he deals damage to a creature. So he's definitely a utility type creature. He's a chump blocker who can also do some extra damage to their board state. So the creatures overall, 6 for 6. No bad creatures here. There are definitely hands where you're going to draw all the lesser creatures and lesser spells, and you're going to have a horrible hand. But it's not the end of the world. Spell-wise, like I said, Dreadbolt, that's great. Runescarred Pit is a really, really strong Exalt. Set 2, each faction has an Exalt where they play minions of their faction. Runescarred Pit might be the best one out of the bunch. Thundercrash Field's pretty good too, because the level 3 does fill all the lanes back up. Runescarred Pit fills each lane up each time it's played, so that's really, really nice ability. And it gives you a 6/6 body, and if you play that in cycle 1, that's a really strong creature. It's a level 2 creature, so can't be dreadbolted. We have Shadow Strength, which becomes a free spell after you play it in level 1, and this actually can be pretty good. One, you want to get it to the free level if you can, and I've been using it so far to pump creatures up and kill stuff off and get that out of the way to make a trade that otherwise I would have lost. I've been finding use for it, and with fewer spells, if I'm trying to flip the RSE, then you're going to play whatever spell you have, and this one's not horrible because it turns into a free spell after that, which is really nice. And then lastly, Red Wasteland. You may destroy one of your creatures. One of your creatures is destroyed before combat. You pump the creature in this lane. I've used it already to, and at level 2 and 3, you get to play a card for free when you do it, which can be nice, but also to pump creatures up and to help trigger the RSE. It's not my favorite Necreum deck. We can look at Circe, by the way. So I think with this one we still run the Sunder, but overall the spells, I'd say 3 out of 4. Red Wasteland I'm not big on. It's not a dead card, but it's not my favorite card, but it's a spell, and if I have to play it to just flip RC, I'm doing it. So overall, not bad. It doesn't have any truly dead cards. Like I said, Red Wasteland would be closest to it. If you want to call it a dead card, you could. So only one in the deck, but overall, this feels better so far, and I'll keep testing with it more. It feels better overall than the other Necreum half deck, surprisingly. So this one was interesting find, I guess. All right, let's look at another Utera deck. And you're going to see a lot of these decks. I don't know if I have any set 4 decks or set 3 decks pulled up. Those ones, again, you're going to have to look at each set and figure out what are the cards you're looking for from that faction, from that set. And set 4 for me, aside from very few Necreum half decks, is largely a horrible set for competitive play, in my opinion. There are definitely some combinations it can have that could be useful, but are they truly competitive or not? I don't know. There's a lot of fun stuff in set 4, but I just don't know that it's competitive enough. I thought Beakers and Bones was a largely horrible legendary drop set, but there's been some combinations that have shown up that have been really strong. It's really creative combinations people have had, and the Necrocrat, the Spell Shield Necrocrat is basically it's like a Kurgaius that you can play on cycle 1. So if you get one of those, that's a really great card. I don't have any, unfortunately. I looked. I need to pull more decks so I can try to get one. But yeah, that's a lot of fun if you get one of those. But we'll talk about set 3 and 4 after we get through these decks here to see if there's anything that needs to be pointed out about them. But you can see here a Nutera set 1 deck, so I'm looking for Mantis, Botanimate, Krogaius, all the cards I talked about before, Swamp Moss Lurker, Darkforge Drain. So here we have an Oros with Darkforge Drain on cycle 2, which is, by many accounts, the best cycle to have it on. I kind of disagree, but that's a matter of opinion, I guess. The reason why people like it on cycle 2 is if you have a Forge Seal and or a Mantis, you can play that level 1 card anytime later. You don't have to level up that card. You just play it later in the match, and you get the benefit of it. I don't mind it being on cycle 3, because if your cycle 2 ability is any good, you're going to play your Mantis or Forge Seal anyway to level it up, and then you still just, the level 2 card, play it when you want. And the cycle 2 Darkforge Drain, if you're not playing a bunch of spells in cycle 1, you're not going to get that much of a benefit out of it in cycle 2. Cycle 3, you're guaranteed to have enough spells in there that it's going to be impactful. So, but, you take it when you can get it. I had the other deck that had it in cycle 4, and it works out. The deck plays oftentimes into cycle 4 because it's hard to kill off. It has a lot of life gain, and then I can finish you off with a breakthrough creature with Darkforge Drain late in the match. But this deck, we have a Mantis. We have 5 spells, so any deck with 4 or more spells is interesting to me. I don't know if I've ever seen a 7-spell base deck. There might be some out there. I don't recall if I've ever seen one, but 6 is normally the max I've seen, 4 and 6. But you can see 9 creatures, 1 spell, and those are largely huge turnoffs for me. But this has 5 spells, so it's very intriguing, especially Nutera. So we have a Mantis. We have Glowhive Siren, which is a great life gain card and creature that can grow if you have life gain. Looking at the rest of the deck, we only have Botanimate and the Growth Aura, so it's not going to be big on life gain, but you could pair it with something that does. Relentless Wanderers. So this is a great minion generator, and you potentially get some Oak Fathers out from it, from the level 2 and 3 version of it. So now you're looking at minion generation with it. Does it have minion synergy? We'll look at that here. Roaring Bear. We talked about bears already. Pretty beefy. This one's kind of weaker, but it does give 5/5 to another creature. So it's kind of giving some stats up towards giving it to something else. Roaring is a great modifier in my opinion. Never sad to see roaring creatures in my decks. And then Stout Basher. So here's a win condition type creature. It's got breakthrough, good stats at level 1, level 2, and level 3. A great target for Darkforge Drain. So creature wise, 5 for 5, really strong. Spell wise, we have Botanimate. We have Feral Instinct, which is a nice card. You give attack, armor, and breakthrough. And when next time it deals damage, you can play a Wisp. You get to play a creature. And this one's just play a card, or this one's play a card level 1 or 2. But it gives something breakthrough. So if you don't have the Basher out there, or they already killed it off, you can use this as a win condition type card late in a match in combination with Darkforge Drain. Ferocious Roar. It's an okay spell. Pumps your creatures. If you get that situation where you got a full board, you don't want to overwrite anything, you can drop the Ferocious Roar, just pump everything. So, decent card. Doesn't necessarily mean it's played all the time, but it's definitely not a bad play in those situations. Lead the Charge. This is going to fall into a utility type card situation for me. You could use it with a card like Mantis, or we don't have a Forge Seal, but when you give a creature it has an activate ability, you could use it with the Wanderers to play extra minions. It does pump their health up nicely, but really the reading portion of it's going to be more of what you're using it for is to get an extra activate out of something. You're not going to necessarily use the pump health. Pump health is just a side benefit, rarely the whole reason for playing the card. But so to me, it's just a utility card, but it's not bad, especially when you have a Mantis with Darkforge Drain in your deck. And Summoning Council, it's a really good spell. Play 2 Wisps, play an Oakfather and Wisp, play 2 Oakfathers. So overall, this deck, no bad cards. You can go a lot of ways with this deck. What makes this deck good, pretty much, is going to be the Darkforge Drain and Mantis. So you could have some bad cards in here, and this deck would still potentially be usable if it had 5 spells that are playable and they're not all really bad spells. You could have better spells than this. Even if you had only 4 spells, it would still be really good. You pair it with another deck that can sling some spells, and you might have something going here. Not perfect by any means, but it's still a really strong, good, solid deck. It's a matter of pairing it with something. What do I have this paired with? I've got it paired with this deck. So I've got it with the Darkheart Sorcerer deck, so I'm obviously leaning into the spell playing aspect of it, and Darkforge Drain with that. So, like I said, besides the other 9 cards, you have a Mantis and a Darkforge Drain Cycle 2. The deck's going to be something you should look at to see and evaluate. In this case, check mark. Good deck. Let's talk about Aloyan. And Aloyan's going to be hard to find really good decks, in my opinion. I really wish Aloyan was better than what it was. I think a lot of people do. And there are some really good Aloyan builds out there. And they're going to include a lot of the cards I'm going to talk about over these next couple decks here. They're very similar, actually. But, yeah, Aloyan set 1 is probably the best Aloyan, set for Aloyan. The set 3 might be the worst. And then I'm not big on set 4. There's potential. There's like 10 cards you could have in a deck, and it'd be a really solid Aloyan deck. Getting those 10 cards is going to be 1 in a million. The set 2s, I don't rank set 2 as the worst, maybe because it can get a Pokemancer, which can do lots of things for you. That's probably one of the key cards for the set, or for the faction, rather. And it's set 1. It's definitely one of the cards you want to have. So with set 1, cards you're looking for are going to be like a Pokemancer, Drix. Rallying creatures are really good. There's a lot of mage synergy that you can potentially get. And set 2 has the Page Walkers, which can really play into the mage synergies. So you can get some mage synergistic decks. I don't know that I have any really good mage decks. I need to look, but a card like Aetherforge Oracle, for example, it's a mage. I don't have a whole bunch of mage synergy for this deck. I'll show you a little bit of it, but this card on its own is really good. You upgrade a card and then discard it. Level 3, you upgrade a card twice in your hand. Instead, you keep the card. But there's mage synergies. There's some shenanigans you can pull with some robot stuff. But nothing in this deck or any of the decks I'm showing. So there's some things you can try to do. I don't think the robot stuff is necessarily competitive. The mage stuff, I think it takes a really, really strong mage type of deck with Allomancers, Page Walkers, which probably leans more to set 2 type of Aloyan decks. But if you can get really strong mage deck builds that can be troublesome for other competitive decks. But when you're playing at the top of the top against the best players, those decks overall don't do well. They're always they're one of those type of decks where you can get really close, but you just don't get over that hump. Maybe it's just drawing a little bit better, or if you had that one extra card in your deck, it makes all the difference in the world. But they can be really strong if you have. But it takes, like I said, it takes very specific mage cards, in my opinion, to make them really strong. But they can be. So looking at this deck right off the bat, only 2 spells. Not pleased with that. But we do have 8 creatures, so we're looking for, especially from my play style, Apocalypser, Drix, Railing creatures. So we've got all 3 of those. That instantly, for me, puts this deck into a potential usable deck. So now we need to see what else does it have. Aetherforge Oracle, good creature. Protective Scavenger, not a great creature, but does have mobility and defender, so it can be. There's some utility there for blocking if you might need it, even though it doesn't play into what you want. But it can. There's uses for it, depending on the match. It doesn't really progress your board state or anything how you might want, but I don't consider it a dead card. Aegis Knight has stealth, can get pumped with armor. You're looking at your deck, and you don't have any creatures with armor other than the Scavenger. No, it doesn't even have armor. I lied. I guess you're getting armor from the spells. So, don't really like it. It's not a dead card because it's stealth, and it gets pretty beefy for a stealth creature. I don't know. It's just an okay card. It's very bottom. It's borderline, in my opinion, as a dead card. Salvage Justicar, good body, and when it's destroyed, it plays a Gizmo minion. So that's going to be one of the other synergies you're looking for with Apocalypser and Drix decks is Gizmo minions. So this plays into that. So that's not a bad card. And Spiritforge Sentinel, it's aggressive, stealth, replacement synergy. Apocalypser wants replacement synergy. That's what you're going to be doing with this deck to finish your opponent off. This is your win condition. So Spiritforge Sentinel, really good card to have with these decks, in my opinion. It's aggressive, it's stealth, gets buffed when you replace something, so it plays into all your synergies. Spell-wise, Scythian Augmentation, you give your creatures armor. If you have a mage in play, deal 2 damage to all enemy creatures. So this is where the mage synergy comes in. Scythian Augmentation is a tremendous spell. If you have mages, that might be my only mage in the deck. Yeah. But when you get it to go off, it's really strong. It's really great. The armor is huge, and then the extra damage to your opponent can help potentially remove some threats off the board if they're low health, or it weakens them down where you're going to be able to kill them. Plus the armor, like I said, gives your creatures a bunch of survival. So it's really, really nice to be able to get that off. And then Force Field, give a creature 6 armor. When you play this on a warrior, it gets 6 attack. Plenty of warriors in this deck. 1, 2, 3 warriors. You can use it to save a creature with the armor. If it's on a warrior, boost their attack. So I've used it with Apocalypser to push his stealth damage through, pump him up a little bit. So this deck here, overall, because it has Apocalypser, Drix, and a Rallying creature, to me, it's strong enough. It's not perfect by any means. Also helping it is the Forgeborn Steel Rosetta. She has Tinker on cycle 2, which is massive. We have Enhance at cycle 3, which is also can be massive, and then Repurpose at cycle 4. Not my favorite there, but it can be useful if you get that far in a match. But this deck has to draw really well. But because of the Forgeborn, you have a lot of options for what you can pair it with and what you can try to do with it. Of course, you want minions and replacement, so you want to be able to put minions out there, which this Forgeborn does on demand at those cycles. You've got Drix, which can do it Salvage Justicar can be sacked, so you get a minion on the board. Obviously, you have a rallying creature to pump everything when you do that. So overall, I like the deck. I would prefer some more spells and better spells, and maybe some of these less of these other creatures. But for a Pocketmaster Drix rallying deck, I'll take it. This was one of my first decks like this. I think I pair it with like a Krogaius deck. I have a deck I'd like to pair it with, but I haven't been able to because it's in my son's account, which we're going to touch on. But this deck's just okay. It's not... When it hits, it's hard to beat. Obviously, any deck with Krogaius is going to be hard to beat when you get Krogaius out there. And the Pocketmaster decks are notoriously difficult to beat when they're going off. If you can't get the Pocketmaster off the board and your opponent has things like Tinker or Enhance that they're playing multiple minions down, and they might have something with Drix out there, they can replace like 5 creatures in one action phase without you getting any interaction in there. And it's at level 3, that's 7 damage per replacement that they're doing. So that can be a ton of damage. And it's not uncommon for people who are playing this style of deck to know that potential's there, and they use that to their advantage. And you can do that straight to the player too. 35 damage to your opponent's health. Hopefully you've done 15 damage by that point to them, and you just finish them off there. They don't even see it coming sometimes. But this deck just okay. So I have another version that I've gotten. And I don't know if I got this in a sale. Let's see here if it has got anything. Nope, no deck history. I might have got this in a sale of someone's collection. This has a Pocketmaster Drix and a rallying creature. It's got a rallying Allomancer, which is really nice. Talk about mage synergy. Allomancer can poke creatures based on how many mages you have in play. So, and the rallying version is really nice. So if you have mages with it, that's really awesome. So again, 2 spells, but it's got the 3 cards I'm looking for in this particular case. Played Impulse Mage is another really good card. It's also a mage, but this destroys... Each player destroys their lowest attack creature at the first 2 cycles, and level 3, just your enemy does. It's Activate. It can be really good. It's a card that your opponent needs to get off the board. You can really wreck your opponent if they don't. So we're looking at the creatures for this deck. Like I said before, let's start with the Forgeborn. So again, we have Tinker at cycle 2, which I think is the best ability to have at cycle 2. We have Repurpose at cycle 3. Again, not my favorite Forgeborn ability for Steel Rosetta, but you can make use of it and do things with it. And then cycle 4 is Inspire, so you get your other Forgeborn's ability. So you can pair it with a deck where you're going to get something that you want, if you have that luxury. So that can be really nice. I like Inspire at cycle 3 and maybe having it with the Darkforge Drain at cycle 3. I think Carl's deck does that. If I'm not mistaken, the one he finished second at Worlds with. His deck's really, really good. Crazy good. But again, so we like the Forgeborn. We've got a Pocketmaster Drix rallying. We need to look at the spells and the rest of the creatures. So Armored Inventor plays Gizmos. So that card can go into the synergy we're looking for. Great. Combat Justicar. It's just a big body. So not the worst card, not a bad card. It's just a big body for Aloyan. It kind of pales in comparison to some other factions, big bodies. But Pulse Mage is a really strong card and can really disrupt your opponent. Pulse Mage has 2 attack, so you can sack a Gizmo minion instead of the Pulse Mage, and your opponent has to sack whatever their lowest attack is, and then the next turn you get to use this again. So playing it off Forge as your second action can allow you at least 2 uses out of it. You can kind of arrange that, line that up to be able to do that and really disrupt your opponent. We already talked about Rallying Allomancer, really great card there. Recycling Prophet, again, not a big fan of the card, but it is a mage for the mage synergy portion. And if this replaced a creature, it gets bonus stats. So you are trying to replace things with a Pocketmancer. So this is just going to get stronger when you do that, especially put over a Gizmo. It's now getting 4/4 instead. Its body gets big enough that it's actually pretty decent. And the levels as you go up, +5, +5, +10, +10, make it really good to use. So initially you look at it, not great, but it's not bad. There's worse things to have. War Machine, replacement synergy, really good body at all 3 levels. So creature-wise, you've got 8 good creatures for the deck. You have a couple different synergies going here, routes you can go. I've won a match with the Allomancers because my opponent didn't know. They were newer. They didn't know what the Allomancers did, and I had my level 1, 2, and 3 out there, and I just kept wiping everything off the board of theirs, and they couldn't kill my Allomancers off. So that's like I said, the creatures are okay, good. We have Electronet, free spell. I'm okay with it. Gauntlets of Solymr. I'm not a big fan of Gauntlets, but it does give armor to a creature, and you get to do 10 damage to a creature. So you can save one of your creatures, potentially remove a creature, a threat. There's uses for it, but it's really, you're going to be relying on whatever you pair it with to make this deck go. It doesn't really have a win condition besides a Pocketmancer, but it has a lot of control aspects for it, so it can be really good and annoying to your opponent. And you do have Pump with the Allomancer. So if they don't clear out your board, because you'll be playing a lot of creatures with this deck, if they don't clear out your board and you rallying, you're going to be pumping your whole board up, it can get bad for your opponent quick. Not to mention with the Drix putting out Gizmo minions, pumping them that way as well. You can get a lot of value out of this. And this is actually the higher rated Pocketmancer Drix rallying deck between the two. But I've played this one more and been in more. I had this one for the longest time, and then I had this one, and I just haven't played it in many competitive events. But I need to. I might be using it in the SFCS coming up soon. So this is Aloyan. And this is, like I said, this is not going to be all-inclusive of everything you can get for each faction, for every set. But it's trying to show you how to look at decks. You already need to know what kind of cards you're looking for. And if you don't know the cards, you're going to have to look at them and try to evaluate that for yourself. But playing will let you know what cards are good. You'll start seeing more cards over time, and you'll be like, I see that card all the time. So then we have an example of a deck. This one's on my son's account. I got this through another person's account sale. This was kind of one of the top tier decks it had in it, and I managed to snag this one. And it's my only one, I think. At the time, it was my only one. It was my first Mantis Forge Seal Krogaius deck. And so I really wanted it because I didn't have any. And having Mantis and Forge Seal means you can use your Forgeborn abilities twice on top of normally. So 3 times total, potentially. It doesn't have an Oros with Dark Forge Drain, unfortunately. But you can pair it with a Circe deck, Perfect Circe, or this one doesn't have to be so bad. Nova's Dominion is pretty good with an Oakfather. Nova's Might can be pretty good late in a match, pumping it multiple times. So I'd rather swap Nova's Might and Nova's Wrath, but overall, it's not horrible for Forgeborn. But Mantis, Krogaius, Forge Seal. We have a Hibernating Bear, so the bear gets really beefy. We have a Mystical Packmaster. So Mystical lets you play an extra Wisp minion. Packmaster pumps your warriors up if they take damage. Not an awful card. The Mystical's nice because you get the extra minion with it. And then a Venerable Ranger, who if you have no empty lanes gets pumped. His stats are pretty good. And when he gets pumped, he's even better. So creature-wise, not bad. No dead cards. Spells, 5-spell Utera deck. Botanimate, Forge Seal, both good spells. Nap Time is really good, and you get some health gain out of it. Primal Surge, if you gain health, it's free, but this gives attack and armor to a creature. It's really nice, especially free. And then Savage Oath, pump a creature, warriors get a little bit extra health at each level with it. So overall, really good. 10 solid cards. Your weakest card is probably the Packmaster and the Ranger. And they're not bad. Depending on what you pair this with, all sorts of directions you can go with it. So it's on my son's account. I need to bring it back over to my account because I haven't been able to find a pair for it on my son's account. I've tried pairing it with Darkheart Sorcerer decks. I've tried pairing it with anything and everything, honestly. And it just doesn't win enough matches. Very inconsistent. So this is an example of a deck. You look at it and you're like, this deck could be really good. But then you go to play with it and it just isn't working out. And I'm by no means looking to get rid of the deck. I still think it could be a really good deck. I just haven't found the right pair for it. Or I don't have the right pair for it, maybe. So I keep trying to find pairs for it. Try different things with it to see what's going to really click. Haven't found that yet. But hopefully, eventually, we'll get there. So you can look at a deck, see that it has really good cards, but my bar for what's good and what's not is going to be different than a new player's. For a new player, this deck's going to be plenty good for them. They're going to do really great with it, and they're going to have a lot of fun with it. For me, being at the competitive level I'm at, this deck is not consistent enough so far for me to really enjoy it. I lose too many matches with it where I just didn't get the cards in the right order. I didn't draw what I needed to. Always needing more than what I'm getting from it. And there are times definitely where I draw everything perfectly and it just blows my opponent away. Other times, though, I'm sitting there wondering what the heck this deck is. What am I doing? So not every, decks can look great on paper, but sometimes you need to play them to really see how good they can be. Sometimes they just don't work out. Other times they do work out. So, for example, when I showed you my Furious Shardback deck and the Necrium deck I paired with it, those decks are not high scoring on SolForgeFusionDecks.com. So if we look at that, neither of them are up here with the score. Now, granted, I might have a lot of high scoring decks, so that's why they're not showing. But I have their scores in my collection manager, and you can see if we go down the following tiny. Let me see how this looks on the screen here. It's really small for you. Let me zoom in. So my 34th deck score-wise is my Furious Shardback deck. And it's there's 2, 3, 4, 5. It's the 6th best Tempest ranked deck I have. You can see all the Necrium decks here. The pair I have for it no, that's not it either. Nope. Where is it? It's not this low, is it? I didn't think it was this low. to the top and look for it, because I know it's up there with its elo. It is. It's that low, 37. So my Necreum half I pair it with is a 37. But you can see here by the deck elo, which is determined by when you play with it in queue against other players, depending on their deck, the player itself, there's a formula for how they calculate elo. Don't know the formula. But you can see I've had a lot of success. These two have been paired largely together, but they do have some other pairings I've been testing with them, with other, whether it's with other Necreum halves or other Tempest halves or other combinations, period. So their elo's not going to be exactly the same. If they were only paired together, they would have the same elo. I'm trying to see if I have any that are that way. So these two, for example, have been paired together, and they've only been paired together with nothing else ever. So, but you can see here a 37 for that Necreum half, and it's a really solid Necreum half. It's not by any means the most powerful in a vacuum Necreum deck. There's way better Necreum decks. Don't get me wrong. But for the pairing I have it for, it's really good with it. And other better Necreum decks, standalone Necreum decks, might not work as well with the pairing as this one does. So that matters too. What you're pairing together with it. So there's something to think about. You can see the deck elos here. I've only got in my top 10 one deck above a 100 score based on SolForge Fusion Decks ranking system, and that's my Swamp Moss Lurker Life Gain half that I started off with. So that's the only one that's rated that high. The next one's my RSE deck down here at 12th. And this is based on elo. And then you've got the deck I just showed you is down here, and you can see it's been losing elo from last time I pulled this data. So it's been losing matches. So it can have, and it's got a really high score. Like I said, a 119 is really solid. But the deck is I just haven't found a good pair for it yet. I want to believe there's something out there for it. I just haven't found it. I need to try some more things with it. I need to see what I've paired with it. I do keep a list of every deck I've ever had, and I retire them out after a while and get rid of all the bad decks. But so you can look at a deck and see that this deck should be really good. And for people who don't have large collections, this deck is going to be really good. If you're not if you want to go into the most competitive event you could play in, this deck might not be the deck to take, based on my play experience. But on that note, I do want to talk about probably the best Utera deck known to man. I believe this is Carl's, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, this is Carl's. So I'm surprised it didn't. What if they didn't do that for that? So he's got a Mantis Krogaius Forge Seal 5-spell Utera deck with an Oros with Dark Forge Drain on cycle 2. So he doesn't have to play the Mantis or Forge Seal until he's ready to. He has Botanimate, great. Druid's Chant, which is some life gain plus creature pump, great. Lycian Rain, minion play with pumping the minions. You get 1, 2, and 3 minions at each level. Summoning Council, more minions, which works with Lycian Rain for pump. He's got a Stouthide Stegodon, life gain, breakthrough, good size stats for it at each level. That's a win condition for him. Combat War Tusk. The War Tusk has a really good body at all 3 levels with being combat. and he's got an armored Bartok, which is nice because it pumps the next creature you play. And I was at level 3, it's +8/+8. That can be huge. So I played against Carl's deck. He played it with an Alloy and half, I believe an Apocamancer, Alloy and half. I don't have that link for it, but I played against him at Worlds, and I had a huge health lead on him. It was like 70-30, we'll say, 70-40 maybe at most. And I was definitely going down the path of winning, but then he got his Krogaius out, level 3, and I was going to be able to handle it. I was going to be able to take it off the board. I had my Swamp Mouse Lurker to use against it. And I can't remember exactly what happened, what he did with that, or if I couldn't get my Swamp Mouse Lurker out against it or something. I don't remember exactly how it transpired, but I was going to be able to get it off the board. I was going to be able to play something to get it off the board and handle it. But then he Darkforge drained it one time, and of course I can't use spells or abilities against it. It's only combat. So he pumped it like, you just made it, I don't know if it was like 10-10 or something, I don't know. It was huge. And then I wasn't going to be able to get it off the board in one shot. I was going to need 2 turns to do it. But then he Darkforge drained it again with his Mantis. And I don't remember. I'm trying to think. I don't know. He did it twice to it, though. He Darkforge drained it twice. I think he did. I don't know if he had Repurpose and he brought the Mantis back out and redid it like the next turn maybe, or I'm not positive exactly how it went down off the top of my head. But he doubled up on the Krogaius there, and it was like a 60-60 Krogaius out there that I just couldn't do anything with. I couldn't stop it, and he crushed me because I couldn't get it off the board. Initially, I was going to be able to, and I was going to survive that blow. And I feel like, well, once that's off the board, I just need to control his Apocamancer and those shenanigans. And if I do that well, I should be able to win that match. But his Krogaius crushed me and wiped me off. So really well played by him there. But this is probably the best. This is the highest rated Utera deck known to the site and to players. And I think it's one of the best Utera halves I've ever seen. And you look at it compared to mine, and it's not that different. I mean, we have Mantis, Krogaius, Forge Seal, Botanimate. He's got Druid's Chant, Lycian Rain, Summoning Council. He's got more minion generation there and pump. Spell-wise, I've got Nap Time, which turns things off. I've got Primal Surge, which is a free spell play. Savage Oath is pump, but not health gain. Nap Time gives me some health gain, though. Creature-wise, I got a Bear, Packmaster, Ranger. He's got a War Tusk, Stegodon, and Bartok. So his are arguably better, but you know the Bear's going to be equal to or better than the War Tusk, 1-for-1. Oops. Packmaster and Ranger, yeah, Bartok and Stegodon are going to be better. The Ranger probably more compares to the War Tusk, and only if I get the Ranger's ability off, and the Bear can compare to the Stegodon. But the decks are not that different. He does have Darkforge Drain, which is a big advantage in that regard, but I compare mine with the Perfect Circe, and that's plenty of value there. So you look at it, and it's like, wow, he does all this stuff with his. My deck's so similar to that, yet can't get mine to work. Not nearly as well as he does. And maybe he's just a better player too. Carl's a great player, so that could be part of it as well, is he's just a better player. So don't just take what I'm saying as it's got these cards, it's a great deck. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying you need to look for cards that the set has and the faction has that you're wanting to play with, that you're looking to do, your idea of what you want to play, how you want to play. And then you have to evaluate the other cards in the deck and then you need to make a deck and go play with it and see the consistency. The thing about great decks is they're consistent. Yes, any deck can have a really bad draw. You can bottom 5 your 5 most important cards every hand, and you're probably going to lose that match. That happens. I want to go here. So there's always going to be the random factor of you just don't draw your cards. There's also going to be the factor of you draw all the cards in the wrong order when you need sequential things to happen. That can cause problems too. But the best decks are consistent decks that have lots of options, so that way, even if you do miss those 5 most important cards, the rest of your cards are good enough to carry you until you do get them. So, it's going to be, there's a lot to go on with, using a site like this to determine what your best decks might be. And looking at them and just knowing and playing with them. Like you see here, I've got, for Tempest, for example, on my account, my 3 best decks are Nova decks. And a card like Furious Shardback, for example, might be underrated in the scoring system. But it hasn't, aside from my deck, in competitive events, and Furious Shardback decks that are paired with Nova decks, outside of those decks, Furious Shardback has not been big on the competitive scene. It's no different than, I think, well, I can't be certain, but I'm pretty certain that Carl is the first person who played a Loyan at the final table of Worlds. I'm pretty sure that's the case. And as far as competitive events go, Jed's the only other person I think who's played a Loyan and won a big competitive event with a Loyan. So, and Jed's deck, that deck is so... That'd be a great example of you're looking at decks and you're seeing some things, but it doesn't probably score very highly on either of the decks. But when put together and then played the way he plays it, it's if you've never seen it, I think there's a video out there of his match against Scuba Toad, and it's masterful how he plays that match and that deck. You have to be a really skilled player to be able to have the foresight that he had while playing. And obviously he's got the experience. He owns the deck. He should try to know it, and he did. And the way he played it, though, so masterful that it was he was playing chess while everyone's playing checkers. That's the perfect example of that case. And his deck, you might look at it and be like, what is this thing? This doesn't look that strong. But when he plays it, it's incredible. And I'll see if I can't find a link to add into the video for it where it's at. He might have it on his YouTube. I'll try to find the link for that video and add it on so you can watch that video. I'll have maybe a card up for it. But that's an example of decks where they might just have good cards. Nothing stands out as great, but when you find the right pairing for it, it really clicks. But I wanted to look at my collection here to show you the scores of some decks. So, like, obviously we talked about this is my best Utera deck, and I agree it plays really well. The pairing I have for it, it's really good. I haven't used either of these two decks with anything. When I do some deck building, I need to try to find pairs for these because this points out some things I didn't know. Like this has 9 total healing sources and synergies. If we pull it open, I look at it. It's got 4 spells. It's a digital deck, and then it's got a bunch of life gain options here, and Oros has some too. No Darkforge Drain for it, but it's something that might be able to pair it with something. I don't know yet. But it didn't stand out as anything. Let me pull it back up. When I look at it, it doesn't have Mantis, doesn't have Krogaius. It does have Forge Seal, but Forge Seal's definitely a notch down from Mantis, but when I'm looking at things, I'm not seeing a win condition here. Spring Dryad's the closest. If your health's up, the level 3 gets breakthrough and plus attack. But I'm looking, I'm like, I'm going to need some pump. It doesn't have Darkforge Drain, so it doesn't stand out to me initially when I'm looking at the deck as something I need that needs to be built right away. But after the site points it out to me, I'm like, maybe I need to revisit that and look at that and see what I can do with it. I can get win conditions from other decks. I've got this deck. It's got Darkforge Drain Cycle 2. It's got a Mantis and Forge Seal. No Krogaius. So this is something I should look at and see if I can't do something with this. It does have 5 spells with Darkforge Drain, which is really nice. So there's potential here. We do have a Basher, which is Breakthrough. So I've got a Breakthrough creature, which is really nice. It does have a Bear, which it's really big. It's got Summoning Council, so I have some Oakfather generation going on. Good spells. This deck, again, digital. I need to look at it and see what I can pair with it. Nova decks, we're not going to look at any of those. But you can see even this deck, we will look at one of them here. Hopefully this is a bad one. So this is the 80, no, it's not 80, it's a 90 rated deck on SolForgeFusionDecks.com. This is a legendary drop deck, so it might actually not be terrible. Obviously you got Nova, but you got a Rex, Thunder Stomper, Tortoise Colossus, Lightning Tamer, Ice Lance Magus, and Ardent Warstoker. The Tamer obviously gives you elementals, which you want for the RSE to flip. Ice Lance Magus can do some damage if it kills something, if it's in that lane. Otherwise, you don't have any other ways to trigger it. You have Warbringer Ritual, which produces spell sprites, unless you play more spells. Ice Storm, Flame Sculptor Seals are fine spells to have. But there's not a whole lot here for... You do have some of the Swarm at Cycle 2. So as far as RSE deck goes, it doesn't look strong. It's super strong. It's not the worst. It's not the worst RSE I have. Let me see if I can't find that real quick. My lowest RSE deck is rated a 67. This is pretty terrible. Its only spell is a Spirit Golem Conclave, which isn't an awful exalt, but it's not having any other spells sucks. So we've got a Nova, obviously. You've got an Ice Lance Magus. You got the Heartseeker, which we touched on. You got a Nargath Commander, but you don't have like a Shard back, which would be really nice to pair with it. A Mongosaur. You also don't have a Thundersaur for either of those two to go off of. Charger Mammoth can be nice. Rageborn Eruptor is an elemental, and then the Solemn Worm is an elemental. But yeah, this deck is horrible, and it's still in the 60s. Because if you did pair it with a deck that could flip RSE, if you flip it first cycle, you might win some matches with it. So, but you can see all these RSE decks. I've tried a bunch of them. Their scores. We've got a 99, which is on my son's account, which I think is the better RSE deck. He's got a Thunder Crash Field, Warbringer Ritual. I like his better. But I wanted to pull up here. So it's hard to tell, like I said, and Tempest for me, like I said, is a really hard faction to judge what's going to really be good or not. Obviously, with certain cards like RSE and Fairy Shardback, that's a lot easier to tell, but there's a lot of other combinations you can have within that can be good. So Necrium, surprisingly, this is my top Necrium deck, and I think it's really good. I do agree that it scores appropriate for it. But normally I would expect to see, like I've got my Shambling Shambler deck, I've got a double Shamble deck. I would expect Shambling type decks to dominate this list. But this deck I got, and it scored this high, obviously. And here's what it has. And it does work pretty well. It was a deck that I got in a sealed event, I believe, when Gorgeous was running those. We've got a Necromancer, which is one of the cards you want to look for in Necrium set 1. You have a Shambler, another card you want to look for. It's got Stitcher, which is a card you want to look for if you have replacement synergy, minions, things of that sort. And then we've got Indomitable Fiend, which I'm not huge on as a card, but it's not the end of the world either. It can, if you're on Forge, it can last 2 turns as a disruptor or do other things with it. But spell-wise, 6 spells. We have Ghastly Renewal, which works with the Stitcher. It puts minions on the board, so we have our minion synergy there. And also at level 3, it reanimates creatures. If you have a Scientist in play, you get 2 creatures instead. Group Meal lets you have some upgrade synergy, puts more minions on the board. Infernal Ritual, minions on the board, pumps zombies in the later levels. It's a win condition card. Can be really strong. Nom Nom, already talked about that as a removal type spell. Also can put minions on the board if you get rid of their creature. Varna's Pact puts a minion on the board and helps with removal. So you can see tons of minion synergy here. All 5 spells so far have some sort of minion synergy. And then the 6th spell has minion synergy as well. It can be free if you gained health. Minions. All 6 spells, minions. You got a Stitcher, Necromancer, Shambler, and a Fiend. And the Fiend is a zombie, so he gets buffed by Infernal Ritual if you have them out there at the same time. And counts for Group Meal for upgrading cards. The Nyx abilities: play a Zombie Brute, mindless zombie minion, and you can destroy a creature to play a creature for free. But so if you use the Forgeborn, you have minion synergy going there. So really, really strong minion synergistic deck. Even though Beakers and Bones has a lot of minion synergy and Scientist synergy, this deck has more minion synergy than any of the decks I've pulled for Beakers and Bones. So really, really sound. And I pair it with an Apocalypser deck for replacement stuff, Gizmo minions. I would have liked to have, instead of the Fiend, have a Harvester here, but it's okay. So this site here, though, SolForgeFusionDecks.com, there's a link in my video description. You can go here and look and find combinations or things you didn't see before. Obviously when I looked at these 2 decks initially, they weren't bad decks. I don't know if they were phantoms and I kept them, or if I bought them and got them, or got them through a sealed event or something, but they're both digital. Obviously, I haven't built anything with them, and I've kind of overlooked them, and this brings them back to my attention. That reminds me, like, yeah, I need to look at that deck and see what I can do. I think, trying to think, before this deck was there, it might have shown another Shambling Shambler deck. I'm not positive, but the Shambling decks are always going to be high up on here for the most part. Aloyan, you're going to see a lot of stuff with Rallying, Drix Apocalypser Rallying, and then you have this deck, a Rallying Captain with 3 Warriors. So that's a nice one. That can pair really well with a set 4 Verlana deck with the Warrior synergy. So that's a deck archetype people have been trying. If we go back to the main page, you can see double Rallying with Apocalypser are the highest rated decks. This one right here has a Drix. but it's an Ironbeard Forgeborn. Necrium, you have Shambling Shambler, Shambling Shambler. These are triple Shamble decks. This is the most amazing Necrium deck ever, and I'm jealous of Sile. So it's got a Shambling Shambler and a Shambling Summoner. Those are probably the two best shambling creatures you can get. The only thing that'd make this deck even more crazy if it had a Darkheart Sorcerer. Who knows? Like, this deck is crazy good. 5 spells. So Disseian Siphon, Circe's Call. You can fill a board up with minions. If it has Stitcher, that'd be really fun. Probably overpowered. Maybe a Betrayer Stitcher with it, maybe. Grave Pact, potential to have lots of things to sacrifice for it. Spirit Leash, good spells. Draft's Will, potentially free. So that's good. The creature-wise, Walker gives minus stats. That's nice. The Geist has good stats and is a spirit. And then you have a Venerable Spirit. Spirit's ability, deployability can make it hard to play, but if you can get it on the board, it's a huge body. So really, 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 really good deck. Doesn't have a perfect Circe with it. That would be another level of broken. But a really, really good deck. And then you have this deck here is a set 3 deck. One of the few times you're going to see a set 3 deck. When you're looking at set 3, obviously cards like Hantu. You can have Shambling. You want Dire Hounds. Dire Hounds are great for bringing stuff back onto the board. Vampiric is a modifier you can get, which is great. Darkshaper Savant, another key card you want to build around. River of Souls, really good Exalt. Sack Chamber, really good Exalt. So, yeah, know the cards that you're looking for when you pull a deck from a set in the faction. And then look at the cards around it. Do they synergize with it? Do you have enough to make that work? Darkshaper Savant, if this was your focus for it, you've got Direhound, which can bring stuff back, plays a mindless zombie minion, which is a level 1 creature, reanimate a level 1 creature, and a level 1 or 2, but you can do level 1 if you want to proc this Darkshaper out of it. River of Souls is basically the same thing. And then you look at, like, Graveborn Caller is Graveborn Caller puts minions on the board as well. So a lot of synergy for Darkshaper Savant, and that's not all that this deck has. It has Hantu. It's got a Shambling Direhound, which is really good too. Vampiric Shard, which can do some damage. Can really do some damage if you bring back the level 3 version at all. So there's a lot more to look at when you look at decks than just having a certain card. That's the start, in my opinion, is you're looking for certain things to kind of key off of. Trying to see here, going to this site, you get to see these top 3 decks for each faction of all the decks that it has info for. You make an account and you can see your top decks for each. If you donate, there's a tool down here to donate. You can donate to PayPal or you can donate SFG. If you do that, you'll be able to export all of your scores to a CSV and get all this information in a spreadsheet. You'll see for all your decks. It also has what they call the Scrap Forge, phantom decks that people let expire, that they didn't soulbind, based on information they have from accounts. And you can see here some double rallying decks people let go. A Drake Apocalypse deck. This was a test deck, though. You can see this deck had double Shamble, double Vampiric. Damn. It's rough. They let go. Someone maybe didn't know what they had. River Souls and Hantu deck gone. They had a Betrayer Gox. These are all test decks for Tempest. And these are all... This one's not a test deck, but Forge Seal and Mantis deck someone let go. So you can see decks people have let go. You can see your top decks, and hopefully this helps point you in the right direction. This only updates once a day, so if you pull a deck today and you go to the site, it's not going to show up there. You might be able to type in the deck name, and it might pull that information up. I don't know how it does that, if it does that for sure or not. But at worst, the next day you can pull up that information and find out. So that's kind of all I have for, what makes a deck good. You need to know the cards in the sets, and if you don't, then you're going to be kind of blind going into it. And you can always ask in Discord, no harm in that. But you need to look at the decks, in whole. You're looking for certain cards, for one, that are going to be things you want to try and do. And they don't have to be the most popular things. Like, I say Apocalypse Drix Rallying for Aloy set 1. Maybe you're not into that. There's other things you can look at. Maybe you want a robot synergy. I've seen some pretty interesting shenanigans with some robot stuff that can be difficult to play against. So you can find combinations you want. You can find your own archetype that you want to play. You just need to know what you're looking for. And then when you find it in a deck, you need to look at the rest of the cards in the deck and see, do they support what you're trying to do? Do they open up more options for you to do? Is it too wide where you've got 10 different options, but none of them are really supported by each other, and you're not going to really get anywhere with it? Does your deck have a finisher? And if it doesn't, you need to find one in your pair that you put it with. You need to have a way to finish your opponent off. Doesn't necessarily mean it needs to be a 30-30 breakthrough Kragaius. That's a nice one, but it doesn't have to be that. It can be other ways. If your strategy is to slowly bring them down, but you got a flame jet that's in your deck, and you can use that to potentially finish them off. Maybe that's your strategy, is direct damage. I don't know. You have to figure that out. And then, of course, after you do find decks you want to keep or play with and pair them with things, you got to play them. And that's really the best part of it is playing them and really seeing how they work. And sometimes, don't play a deck once or twice and be like, this deck's no good. You need to play it a dozen times. I've had so many decks where, because there's a level of you have all the right cards, but you have to learn how to play the deck too. You need to know what cards are important to play versus what's not important to play. And even with decks that I'm fairly experienced with in my account, as I play them more, I'm like, you know what, this card's better than I thought it was. I should be playing this more. And you learn those things by playing and getting in different situations and starting to see the power of different cards sometimes. And it's easier to look back on things and say, oh, I should have done that. But you don't know when you're playing at the time what you're going to draw in the future. So sometimes you should have done that, but other times you just never know. So, there are times where you did level that card up and you didn't draw it. So maybe you shouldn't have played it. Maybe it wasn't worth leveling at that time. So it's not, like I said, it's not an exact science. There's a lot of opinions out there, and some people are just naturals with decks. They look at a deck, they can instantly tell you if it's good or bad. That's just one of their gifts. I don't have that gift. I look at decks, I have to evaluate them, and then I have to play them and test them. I have let me zoom back out to a normal size. I've got, 85 decks between my son's account and my account of decks. And you can see, probably can't see, it's too zoomed out. This whole block here is Drix decks of some nature. It has a Drix in it. That's what? It's 10 Drix decks. I've got a Drix deck above it with Krogaius in particular. But you can see these decks also probably have an Apocalypser with them. I will be honest. They probably have Apocalypser Drix. But you can see how many I have. And I haven't tested them all to see, does this one work? Does this one work? Because I've got so many decks that are similar. I just don't know which one's better. So that's where my evaluation skill, so to speak, fails. I don't have the ability to decipher between these 6 Aloyan decks to determine which version or versions are going to be the best. So there's a lot there. I could be better at it. Other people might be able to look at it and be like, no, this one's the one you definitely want to go with, and you play it, and that's going to how it works. But playing it's going to be the real test. And sometimes like this hand 2 deck I got as through the Winter Solstice event. I got this and I didn't know what I wanted to pair it with, so I've got 4 different pairs for it, and I still don't know which one I want to keep or which one's the best, or if I want to keep any of them. But I like the Necreum half that I got from it. It's probably my best or second best hand 2 deck, and I just don't know what to do with it yet. But I made these pairings for the Winter Solstice event and played it against my opponent who gifted it to me. So some decks I've narrowed down, others I have not. Some I really haven't, I've started to expand more on. So like this draining the Darkforge deck, I showed you this Utera half with Darkforge Drain, but I've got other Darkforge Drain decks, and maybe I'm trying to do some spell slinging stuff with them here instead of a Necreum build with it. So I'm testing things out. Like the deck is strong, but maybe not good enough. So I try some other things with it, and I just don't know. And it's rare. It's rare that I'm ever done. So like my Worlds deck that I finished 3rd with this one, I've got 6 other versions. I've retired a bunch. I've got another pairing I have for it with a different Necreum half that's really good. I've got 2 more down here with different Necreum halves that I haven't fully tested yet to see if I like any of them or not. So there's lots of decks you compare things with. It's not just one build and it's going to be make or break. Sometimes you got to test it with multiple builds until you find the one that works. That's the case with this deck, which I might consider my best deck now. This is the 2nd version of it, so I keep track of that info, so I have that knowledge. I had a different version initially. It wasn't consistent. This one has been wonderful. I had a 3rd version that also wasn't as consistent, so I just kept this version. That's the ideal situation for me, where I have only a handful of versions and I find the one that does work, and I just keep that one cut down. I don't like having this many decks. I want to have 1 or 2 versions at most of any of these types of builds, and that's it. This RC, this is my newest one here. You can see I've tried to build it with some other Necrium decks. I haven't liked any of them. This one here, my newest one, I do like so far, but I haven't played it much. I need to play it more to see if it's as consistent as I need it to be. This one, if that other one is better, if this new one's better, I might get rid of all the 3 and just have that one. I don't have a need for multiple RC builds. I really don't have multiple needs for multiple version of a similar style deck, other than I don't know if this one is better or worse than that one yet. So when I know when something's better, then I'll just keep the one version of it and I'll move on, because I personally don't have a need for having 2 decks with one that's worse, clearly worse, and even though it could be strong and good, I'll just play the one that's better. But if I have multiples, like I've got 2 Drix decks and a Drix Gregaius deck here, I don't know which ones of these are good, bad, or the other. I got another Windy Shambler deck. It's got my Necrium half with a different Tempest half. Again, don't know what's better. I need to play them more and see about the consistency to figure that out. But I've got so many decks, it's hard to just focus that down and play that. I haven't done it. I need to. But I encourage, people to use the tools that we have available for you that have been made by community members, whether it's the Collection Manager, SolForgeFusionDecks.com. You can look at your decks in game, or you can look at them on the website. I like looking at things on the website. That's how we did it before the client was out. So that's just how I was used to it, I guess. But also, depending on whatever view you like looking at them, you can do it in the client. This for me is a lot more easier because I can tab over and look at the other tools to analyze things or find things I need to find, versus in client doesn't have all those capabilities yet. But again, looking at a deck, look at what it has and what you're trying to do with it, or what you're looking to do, or what you could do with it, and see if that's something you want to build. This deck, for example, doesn't stand out as anything special to me. It does have a Dreadbolt. It does have Varnish Pact, so there's minion and potential removal possibilities here. Red Wasteland provides potential pump for me. Ghastly Renewal, more minions, and reanimate at level 3. So the spells are okay. Red Wasteland, not big on that one, but the other 3 are okay. The Circe is got Soul Siphon, Sorrow, Army Commander. So Army Commander 4 is good. Sorrow, not big on Sorrow at all. They should have just made that all enemy creatures, and that would have been fine. It's a horrible ability. Otherwise, you can't. What are you supposed to pair it with and have stuff on the board? Soul Siphon, not to mention if your opponent's playing Necrium. Soul Siphon, it's okay if you have stuff to sacrifice or needs to sacrifice, but if we look at your creatures, the Moeba, of course, like I always say, level 1's pretty weak for the most part. Level 2 and 3 are good. Bride of Frankenbaum, free spell plays. That's something that you could potentially use to your advantage. She might need some pump in stats, though, because she's not overly strong. The Slime, the Hemophagic, there might be a situation where you'd want, if you're able to pump out some minions and you got a full board, make use of something like that, but I don't use it as much as you'd think they intend for you to. Stats-wise, Slime's nice with the armor. Hibernating Poltergeist. So if you did destroy a creature, which you do have those capabilities with the Slime, the Red Wasteland, You can do damage to a player to gain health. It's basically a worse version of Vampiric, but it also can do more damage at each level than Vampiric. But you can also do the damage to a creature instead of a player. But you can hit the player. Poltergeist is a neat card. Don't see a whole lot of it, but if you have a deck that it can be used in, there's potential there for it. Plague Spewer, not a fan of this card. Choose a faction. All the creatures of that faction lose stats. It's like a worse Spirit Reaver or a different version of Spirit Reaver, but also not a fan. Spite Maiden lets you play spells for free, so you have some more free spell plays. So Spell Slinger might work well with this deck. If I'm looking at it, I don't see a win condition here. Poltergeist has the most potential as a creature here, and that's only if you're going to be if you've sacrificed something or destroyed something this turn. So that alone is going to be tough to really set off. You need the Slime or the Red Wasteland to be played first, and then the Poltergeist, and that's your turn. So I don't know about it. I'm looking at the deck, and the spells are okay, but there's not a whole lot of, like, you have the Bride of Frankenbaum as your only scientist. So that synergy is not really there. Varna's Pact, there's not a whole lot of minion generation going on here, besides Ghastly Renewal. So this deck I'd be looking at and say this deck is not good. If this was a Phantom, I would not soulbind it. It doesn't have anything I'm looking for. It doesn't do enough of what it wants to do well. If it had a Blight Witch, maybe instead of the Plague Spewer, if it had something else besides the Red Wasteland, or even if you kept it at that point for synergy with the Poltergeist, if you had another Scientist instead of the Plague Spewer, maybe, so I'm not big on Plague Spewer, another Scientist instead of that, maybe, but even then, I don't know. So this deck, you'd look at it and be like, no, not very big on it. Plague Spear could almost be defined as a dead card. If your opponent's playing the same factions as you, it's going to be a problem for you. These creatures are not great. They're just okay. There's no great creatures in this. None of the creatures are great. The spells are not bad. Ghastly Renewal, Dreadbolt are two really good spells. Red Wasteland, borderline useless, but it does have the utility with the Poltergeist potentially. And then Varna's Pact is just okay. With no other minion true synergy out here, it makes it worse. If you had more minion synergy, it would be better. But just an example of, that was just a random deck I selected out of my account. So, yeah, I guess I hope this video helped you. Obviously experienced players aren't going to need my advice for anything, and most people are probably really going to be better deck builders than I am. I'm too indecisive in that regard. For newer players, hopefully this gives you some insight into things to look for, how to analyze your decks. Use the tools at your disposal. You can also use Discord, ask in there, post a picture of your deck, post a link of the deck. You can't always judge a book by its cover, and that's so true with the decks. Sometimes there's things there you just don't see, or it works out really well when you find the right pair for it. And when I first started out, my first 3 months of playing the game, I lost like every match, and I thought I was better than that, but at the time I didn't know. But I was playing against some really good players too, and we had to use TTS to play all of our matches, and with that we had to have voice communication, and they would be trying to help me, teach me as I'm learning how to play and how to do things. And, they'd be like, you sure you want to do that? You should probably look at doing this. And they really helped me out. And then in that 4th month, I was really at a point where if I didn't start getting better and playing better, I was probably going to quit the game. And what I ended up doing was deciding I'm going to delete all my decks and I had like 50 decks at the time. I was like, I'm going to delete all my decks out because they are not good and they're not working. And then I made new decks and I tried to get fresh ideas and I reviewed my decks over again and looked at things. And granted, it's still a process. You can see I've gone through, how many decks was that? 302 decks, 301 decks, or 300 decks even. I don't know why there's a top line up here skipped. That's weird. Yeah, there's 300 decks that I've retired out since I started playing. I started in November of 23, so it's just over 2 years ago. 300 decks that I've retired out that have just not been good, or I've found better of them. And some of these are not going to be decks that they were sealed event decks or something. I like keeping a small deck list, and I don't like keeping my best decks, but. I built new decks, and one of the decks I built was the deck I went and played Worlds with. Sometimes you get lucky, and that was lucky fuse for me. And then I was playing it against Nathus in a match, and he pointed out how good it was. He recognized it was good, and I was just playing a deck thinking maybe it's good, but not realizing what I really have. And when he said that, I took a closer look, and then I started to play it more, and I was winning more, and I was like, he's right. And I learned how to play the deck even better, and, I know how to play the deck really well now. Practice makes perfect in that regard. Knowing what cards to play, when to play them, what's the most important card to play, what type of strategy do you need to take against this opponent. Those are things you learn through playing. And then there's other decks that I've made. When I pulled the Utera deck that I started out with in this episode, I saw that deck, I opened it, and I might have done a video on that. Might have been part of my video of opening packs at the time. I pointed it out as a deck that this deck is interesting. I need to remember to look at this deck at the time because I just was scanning them in, I was reviewing them, and I put them all in stack till I get them sleeved and whatnot. And I came back to that deck and turned out to be really good. It's probably my best deck now. It's on par with my other deck, my Worlds deck. Sometimes, and that was, we'll say a year later. So I've obviously learned in that time what I've learned a little bit more about deck building in that time to be able to identify what is a good deck and not a good deck. For the most part, if I'm unsure about a deck, I'll probably keep it. If it's a Phantom, I'll soul bind it. If I think it might be good, it's rare that I pass on a deck that was actually good. But it's possible now. I could do that. There's going to be decks that I pass on that other people are going to look at and be like, oh, that deck would be really good. And like, let's say it just has a Shambler in it. It's got some good spells, but the creatures are maybe just okay. Well, for me, that might not be good enough for my collection. But for your collection where you've got 20 decks, it might be great for your deck. You don't have a Shambler yet. So yeah, that's going to be a good deck for you. So, there's a lot of factors that go into things, and you got to consider where you're at and what you're looking to do, your play style. All those factors play a role in addition to the cards themselves, the synergies within the deck themselves. And it just takes a total evaluation process. And most people who play these type of games enjoy that type of stuff. I know I do. That's one of the parts about playing the game I like most is the deck building. So But I'm not one of those super creative types either, where I try to pull off wacky combos or nothing. I just like being able to build the best deck possible and winning with it. But as you can see, I've got tons of decks to play and test with. I need to cut that list down some more. Hopefully I will. But yeah, I just hope this episode helps some players, whether you're new, old, somewhere in between, and hopefully you learned something. And please feel free to leave comments, suggestions, whatever you want to say, criticize, whatever you want to do. I'm open to hear whatever you guys have to say about the video or your thoughts. If you haven't played in the SolForge Fusion Championship Series, I highly recommend it. It's been a great experience. I continue to recommend it. There's lots of opportunities to play against a lot of different players, whether they're new or old or somewhere in between. And you're going to play some players who play sweaty decks, and you're going to play players who are playing starter decks. So it's a good experience to test your decks against and learn, and just have an opportunity to learn more if you want to play in competitive events. Obviously, we don't know for sure what's going to happen this coming year for Worlds, whether that's going to be digital or if it's going to be back at Gen Con in a physical form. I'm hopeful that it's going to be physical and at Gen Con, and I hope that they, get it right and try to actually support Worlds as a Worlds type event and make it where people want to come. But I don't have too much faith in that. But we don't know what their plans are yet, and we'll see what they do for that coming up this coming year. But like I said, hopefully this video helped. I appreciate you sticking through it. I know it's a long video. It's been over 2 hours. So I just wanted to put out a lot of information and try to show people different things, talk about some decks, and hopefully it helps everyone else on their journey for finding that deck that they really enjoy playing and can win with. So thank you, and I'll catch you guys next time. Take it easy.